I refresh our I know. Gosh, I don't know what you did. You get a shirt? I did hear that, yeah. I'm going to do that later,
So the live stream is live now. If you want to share it, so
oh yeah.
Okay. We're going to need to write on this stuff. All right. Welcome, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. You can leave. I don't know. Get that open. I also feel like it's warm in here, so I think it's already on 6 All right. So, are we filming me or on the intro or what?
yes, we are.
Okay, welcome everybody. This is the Naples Bitcoin Blockchain Meetup, and our mission is to accelerate the peaceful transition to a Bitcoin economy, and we do that through education and technical assistance and building community. That's what we're doing right here. So tonight we have a very special guest who I'll introduce in a few minutes. But first, I just want to remind you of all of the things that we have going on here in the community and online. And so first of all, most of you are familiar with our Bitcoin Day events. So we have Bitcoin Day conferences. The next one is coming up in Tysons, Virginia, or the Washington, D.C. area And then the next one after that will be here in Naples in January. So Tyson's, Virginia, September 27th. And then Naples, January 17th, I believe it is. So you can go to bitcoinday.io and get all the information about the upcoming events. We also have a family office symposium coming up in Naples on November 6th, the Naples Family Office Wealth Management Symposium, November 6th at the Hilton. And this is the website for that. Oh, it's supposed to be a .com after that, naplesflsymposium.com. You can find out all the information about that. And if you know of anyone who might be interested in attending that or sponsoring that, please put them in touch with me. Yes, Jack.
Do I have to be an accredited investor to come to the Naples Symposium?
You do have to be an accredited investor. Yes.
How do you accredit yourself as an investor?
How do we accredit?
Well, an accredited investor is someone who has, let's see if I know the official SEC definition of accredited investor. Is it 2 million?
200, no,
Oh,
200 income.
$200,000 income for an individual, right? Or 300,000 as a couple.
Right.
Yeah. Or $1 million in assets, not including your house. Yeah. That makes you an accredited investor. Yes. So if you know anybody that wants to sponsor or speak that would like to pitch to that group of audience, then let me know. All right. And then these are all our X channels. So if you're on X, or formerly known as Twitter, bitcoinday.io is our Bitcoin Day channel. Protocol Pulse HQ is where this is live streaming right now, correct?
Yes.
Protocol Pulse HQ is where we live stream these meetings and put up lots and lots of interesting Bitcoin and other related content. Naples BTC Block is the MeetUp group channel on X, and Cypherpunk'd is Maddie's special channel where he does deep dives with authors and people that are prominent in the Bitcoin and Web3 space. So that's where you saw the Lawrence Lepard and Dominic Frisby and soon to come Knut Svanholm and others. So if you're interested in deep dives into some of these topics, then that's the channel to watch. Okay, I believe that's it. So without further ado, today we have Madison Hanson, who is the founder and president of the FGCU Crypto Club. So welcome.
Hi everybody, my name is Madison and I'm so happy to be with you tonight. Today is a really big day for me. It's my first time speaking publicly at a Bitcoin event, but it's also a really big day for every single person in this room. July 2nd is the halfway point through the year, but July 2nd, 2025 is actually the halfway point between 2000 and 2050, which means right now we are closer to 2050 than we are 2000. And if that doesn't tell you that we're more focused on the future, I don't know what will. So a little bit about me. This is me, and I go to Florida Gulf Coast University. Right now I am majoring in finance and I'm minoring in economics. I'm going into my senior year, which I'm able to graduate in 3 years due to all the classes I took in high school accidentally. But now in college, I do so much, and if I stood up here and told you all the things I did in college, it would be too much. And I do a lot of other things besides Bitcoin. I do leadership. I have over 1,000 hours of community service I've done in the last 2 years. I have multiple teams and multiple clubs and sports, and I do jujitsu, and I skateboard, and I do all these crazy things. But Bitcoin is truly my purpose, and it's my passion, and it's why I'm here today to talk to you. So I wanted to kind of guide this talk about my life story since I learned about Bitcoin and how that kind of brought me to where I am today. So I call this the spark. I don't really remember the spark because I was 11 years old, but back in 2016, I learned about Bitcoin. I don't really remember how it all happened, but all I remember is I would watch the news. I'm an only child, so I had a lot of time on my hands. And I watched the news, and Bitcoin was always popping up, or it would pop up on Instagram, and I never heard of it before. Then my dad started catching on to it, and he said, what is this Bitcoin? And, I still don't really remember what happened because I was 11 or 12, but he convinced me that it was what we were going to do with our life, basically. So when I was, in 7th grade, I bought him this shirt for Christmas that said, "I am Satoshi Nakamoto." I didn't know who Satoshi Nakamoto was. I just found this shirt on Amazon, and I was like, oh, it has something to do with Bitcoin, like he'll like it. And in this next picture here, if you're familiar with Wells Fargo, that's what it looks like when you send a Zelle transaction. So when I was in middle school, I didn't have my own Bitcoin wallet. I couldn't figure that out by myself. So I would send money to my dad, and I would just say, "Bitcoin, please." And I would just say, "Can you buy it for me?" And we have a little wallet I had in high school that he would put money on, whenever I sent it to him. And then this last picture here, this is my dad and I. We went to a Billie Eilish concert, and that's when he taught me about the laser eyes and how that was part of the community. And I think from there, that was really my spark. That's when I realized, laser eyes, what does that have to do with Bitcoin at all? And then you learn about the moon and Bitcoin to the moon, and what does that really have to do with Bitcoin? And you realize that it's more about a community, and then you find the purpose, and then that's where the power comes from it. So it started in 2016, but since then, Bitcoin has followed me everywhere I've gone. I'll tell you a little story. So in 2021, my dad and I, we were going through a rough patch in our life. Our family was going through a separation, and we needed something in our life that was going to bring us positivity, something that we could do together that wasn't so focused on all the negative things that was going on in our life. So we started a tea company. This was called the Divine Tea Company, and we did farmers markets. We had an online presence. We really did a lot. And it taught me so much about business. It taught me about marketing. It taught me about social media, but it also taught me about Bitcoin. My dad was able to do all the back end stuff with the company, and then I was the one who did all the marketing and all the fun stuff. And we had this little sign that said "Pay with Bitcoin," and we actually had a wallet set up where we were able to accept Bitcoin back in 2021. Every single farmers market we went to, Saturday and Sunday, no one buys Bitcoin. No one buys it with Bitcoin. But we have the sign there, and so many people said, "Oh, Bitcoin," and it's yeah, and they're "Oh." That's all they would say but it was the fact that they noticed that it was Bitcoin, and that maybe planted a seed in their mind, for the very first time. And who knows, that person who said, "Oh, Bitcoin" on that sign is someone who now invests in Bitcoin years later. So then that one day finally came, and this man came to buy tea with Bitcoin. So I have all that transaction screenshotted, and it was a really big moment for me because for the first time someone actually paid with Bitcoin in 2021 at a company that I co-founded with my dad. So in high school, I never thought that was actually going to happen. So that was a really big part of my journey and how it followed me everywhere. And that was in high school. But then moving to college, that's when I actually started the crypto club. And I'll talk about that more later, but it really has impacted my college career. It's impacted who I am as a person. It's really changed the trajectory of conversations at my college. People didn't talk about crypto before. People, pushed it to the side. And because I was able to start this club, we had 40 people at our last meeting. And that's something that would not have happened if I didn't take the initiative to start that. So talking a little bit more about the crypto club, here's some pictures from this past year.
I want the cookie.
I made those cookies. They're homemade. So I wanted to tell you a little story about how I started the crypto club and how I got the idea. So I'm a finance major, minor in economics, trying to be cool and hang out with all of the different finance bros and what am I going to do to be a stockbroker and all that. That's what I wanted to do when I got to college. So I go to the stock club meeting, the Student Trading Optimization Club, And we're talking about alternative investments. I'm kind of sitting in the back because I don't really know anybody. I'm a freshman. They're like, real estate, talks about it for 5 or 10 minutes. Crypto, let's just not even talk about that. It's risky. Nobody here is even investing in crypto. So like, what's the point? Like, next slide. And I just sat there. I was kind of looking around like, is anybody going to say anything, or is this just how we run the club? And I realized that there was so much ignorance at my school, and there was so much education that was being missed just because people didn't want to take an opportunity to learn something new. They were so focused on the traditional finance. So I went home, I talked to my dad, we came up with a plan, and I spent the whole rest of my year coming up with the crypto club. And this was not easy at all. There was a lot of different challenges that you have to go through when starting a club. To have a club, you have to have 4 officers. So I have me, and now I have to convince 3 other people to be officers for a crypto club. And they're like, what's crypto? What's Bitcoin? So I found 3 friends who are also finance majors who I convinced, and I'm like, it's a finance club, like, come on. And they were lucky, like, they really helped me out, and I was super lucky with that. But then you have to find an advisor to be, oversee your club. And I asked 40 professors, every single finance professor, every single economics professor, every single management professor. And every single one of them said no, or just didn't even answer me at all. And then on the very last day of the very last hour, the day of the application being due, some lady messages me back and says, I don't know anything about crypto, but I'll help you. And you're probably wondering, like, why did she say she'll help me? Well, that's because my email subject line went from crypto club looking for an advisor to help. Exclamation point, like, I need help, I need an advisor. So I think she felt really bad at 11 p.m. on the last day, and she's helped me out. And I haven't seen her at any of the meetings, and that's okay, because her being a part of the crypto club and her saying that she'll do it is something that, changed the trajectory of the crypto club. It would have never happened if she didn't just agree to it. So again, it really brings in the people part about, crypto and Bitcoin and the whole community. And I did also want to just touch on the fact that it's called the crypto club. I've got a lot of backlash about the fact that I said it's crypto, but listen, there's a lot of students on campus, like the ones that I was in the stock club with. And if they're already against Bitcoin, why would they join a Bitcoin club, right? There's a lot of people who are, they're against Bitcoin, but they're into XRP or they're into all these little meme coins. Let them be into that. If you get them into the club under crypto, then you can teach them about Bitcoin. But if you just make it a Bitcoin club, then you're pushing people out. So that's why we are the crypto club. And also we like to talk about different things like in Web3, but I like to focus more on Bitcoin. When I graduate this year, I don't know what's going to happen or where the club will be, but I know that the foundation that I've laid here has hopefully, prepared the club to take off and really be a legacy club for our school. I think out of all the clubs, this is one of the most important ones that FGCU now has.
Yeah.
Yes.
The advisor.
Yes, all because of her. And like we do guest speakers and things like that. For example, this is Emily Landis Walker. She's really big into blockchain. She's done a lot of different things in her career, but she was on the 9/11 commission, and I met her through a friend of a friend, and she was able to come guest speak. And all the people that I meet at meetups like this or conferences, those people come and do guest speaking. So that really does drive traffic to our club instead of just me being the one that talks all the time. But also free food in college. If you don't have free food, no one's going to come to the meeting. So we always have Chick-fil-A. I try to make cookies. I try to make it a fun place to go. Okay, now we're going to get into the fun stuff. So this is my turning point. You're probably wondering, how is a random guy in a LinkedIn logo my turning point? But really, yes. My whole life changed when I found out about LinkedIn. And it's funny because I was completely against LinkedIn. I'm on all other social medias, but I thought LinkedIn, like another social media, but business, like, come on, are we doing too much here? And then I found out that LinkedIn can change your life. I met a crypto recruiter on LinkedIn, and she said, if you want to meet people, you need to make your LinkedIn about Bitcoin. So I did. I changed my Bitcoin cover. I changed the cover to Bitcoin. I changed my profile to Bitcoin. My bio says like founder of the crypto club. I made it very focused in Bitcoin. From that moment on, she said, reach out to 25 people every single day. And the second that they respond to you, you message them and you say, hey, I really like that you do XYZ. I really want to have a title like you one day. Can I get a 15-minute call to get some advice or hear about like what you did to get to where you are now? And I did that for the past like 6 months. And because of that, that's why my life changed. That's why I'm here like talking to you today. I met so many different people. I've had so many different Zoom calls, but there was one call that really changed my whole life. And that was a call with a guy named Kenny. And he is partners with Anthony Pompliano for the Crypto Academy. And I didn't really know who Kenny was, honestly. Random cold reach out on LinkedIn. And he told me about Anthony Pompliano and the Crypto Academy. And I was like, oh, well, I know him. That's pretty cool. And he said, I think that you should be a part of it. I think that this is the next thing for you. And I also know a girl who, reminds me a lot of you, and I'm going to connect you with her. So both of those things together really helped me out. I did the Crypto Academy, and from there, I made a community worth of people who were like-minded, who understood me, who were there for me, and who wanted to connect me to help me be like the most successful that I could be. Then I met Madeline, which is the girl that Kenny said that we remind each other of. And Madeline really helped me out. She volunteered at the Bitcoin conference last year. And because of that, and because of our friendship we made, she connected me with Nick, who also does the conference. And from there, it all kind of sprouted. And, doing the Crypto Academy, you meet one person after another. You're at a conference, you meet more people, then you get an internship. And I'll keep talking about it, but it really all starts with LinkedIn. I thought, reaching out to people wasn't going to do me anything, but maybe get me some traditional advice that anyone would tell anyone. But when you get face-to-face with somebody on a Zoom call, you are personable with them. You're talking to them about who you are. You have initiative. So many college students aren't putting themselves out there. So if you're doing that, then they take an interest in you and they want to help you out. And I feel like I'm very fortunate to be so early, because in 10 years, when people are reaching out on LinkedIn, it's going to be like too hard to sort through. But right now, it's still kind of new, and I have that advantage. So I've met a lot of other people on LinkedIn too, who I then connected with again at the conferences or different things. So because of it, I really have changed my life and started to build my community. And that leads me to the Bitcoin conference. So this was like the best week of my life. I have never been to a Bitcoin conference before, but because of LinkedIn and because of all the people I met, the number one piece of advice was, you need to go to these conferences, you need to meet people, you need to shake hands, you need to give business cards out. And I thought, go big or go home, let's go to the biggest one. So I got to go to Las Vegas, and I actually got to volunteer, like I said, because I met Madeline and connected with Nick and the whole team. I was able to do the whale registration. And because I was able to do the whale registration, I got to meet all of the whales that came and checked in with me. And it was so cool to just be in the room with so many winners and be around so many like-minded people who just understood it. As you can see, Michael Saylor, I got to meet him. That was like my number one thing, which I did not think was going to happen. And it's just one of those things where right moment, right time. I was sitting on the floor, actually, watching him do like a little conversational talk, not even a big speech, on the first day. And I kind of snuck in the room and crawled up there because there were so many people in the room. And then after, everybody gets up and leaves the room when he's done speaking because he goes backstage. But I'm like, I'm just going to wait a second. He might come back out. And of course, he comes back out, walks down the stairs. I'm like, hey, can I get a picture? And it was just like the best moment, and everyone was taking pictures. And then down here, you can see me with like some random people. These are people from the Crypto Academy, so of my cohort specifically. So we were able to connect and meet up in person. So I thought that was really cool because we all have a big group chat and we're all friends online, but being able to connect with people in person is what the community is all about. And then this is my new friend Kingston, who I was able to work with on the Bitcoin conference registration. And it's just really nice to meet younger people who are also into Bitcoin, because there's, a fine line between young people who don't get it and then the older people who don't get it. So it's just really nice to have someone who you're going to probably be working with for the rest of your life, and also a good friend. So I got to, meet Michael Saylor. I witnessed Ross Ulbricht's first public appearance, and it brought me to tears. Like being in that room on the last day with so many people and him coming out for the first time, it was like it just gave me confidence that I'm right where I'm supposed to be, and everyone that's in that room also knows that this is the future, and we're just such a big community that this conference showed me that, and I'm going to go to as many more conferences as I can in the future. Okay, so now talking a little bit deeper about Bitcoin. So some people feel this way. Some people think Bitcoin's just an investment. But to me, I see Bitcoin as an identity. So it's something that I identify with, and that means that I think it's part of who I am, and I try to put it into everything that I do in my life. So it's not just money, it's not just an investment, it's my purpose. So this is an example. These are some of my coworkers that I work with at my school. So they're actually all my supervisors, and I'm the director of this program called Alternative Break, which is a community service-based trip. So we go to 2 different places in the U.S. and we bring 20 students, learn about some issues that are going on, and then actually impact that community and do service. So I do that under this program called the Leadership Experience at school. So everything I do is centered around leadership, and everything I do is centered around helping people. But it's not centered around Bitcoin. So how do I make Bitcoin part of my identity if I'm not going to school for Bitcoin? If I'm not focusing on the crypto club, I have other things that I'm doing, but how can I bring Bitcoin into my life? For example, I'm wearing this hat that says Infinite Money, and you're probably like, what does that hat have to do with this? But me wearing this hat, we did a retreat where we had to go check out a campsite to see if we're going to bring students there later in the year. And we went on a little brunch, and just because I was wearing that hat, every single one of my coworkers asked, what's that hat mean, And I was able to talk to them about Bitcoin, and our brunch turned into a Bitcoin brunch because I was able to just make it a Bitcoin meetup. And they were asking me questions about it. I was able to tell them about the crypto club more, and it really just opens up people's minds for you to be able to plant seeds. Again, they may not go home and buy Bitcoin that day. They may walk away from that conversation and still think, this lady's crazy. And they may still think that their US dollars have value. But everyone knows that we are going into a new direction. Like I said, we're closer to 2050 than we ever have been before. And I was able to really bring that into my everyday life. So I started this job a month and a half ago. And since then, I've talked about Bitcoin a lot. And a lot of people have been taking more of an interest in Bitcoin who probably would have never, ever thought about Bitcoin, at least not now in their life. So I've been able to do that, but also Bitcoin as a mission. So I'm making it my mission to teach people this. This isn't something that I want to do. This is something that I have to do. Servant leadership is a type of leadership where you have this want to serve first. Before being a leader, you want to serve and you want to help people. And that's truly how I feel about Bitcoin. I feel like it is my mission and my purpose to serve people and teach them about it. So this is me, and I think in the end of May, I went to Texas for a leadership retreat for this job actually. And there were students from all over the United States. And the whole point of this leadership retreat was to figure out what is your vision for the future. So we learned about, community building and all the things about working with a team and all that stuff for 3 days. And then on the very last day, we had to create our vision. So they said, close your eyes, think 25 years in the future. What is the headline? What do you want to see in the world based on what you did for society? And something they said about the vision, which I thought was really cool, is your vision can't be something that if you die tomorrow, you're sad that you didn't accomplish it. You have to let your vision live way past you. You have to detach yourself from the vision and realize that it's for society. It's not for you. You're capable of creating the vision, and that's what you're there for, but then you give it to society and you let go of it. So, of course, I had to make mine about Bitcoin because that's what I do with everything. And my headline was Bitcoin replaces war with peace and restores global freedom. Because I truly believe in 25 years, we can be in a place where we don't have war and we have peace. And there isn't enough money to fund the war because we have Bitcoin. And I really think that just because I bring Bitcoin up everywhere, it's really brought it into other people's lives. So I met people from all over the United States. So hopefully I got to plant a seed, not just by this, but because of the merch I was wearing and the hats that I was wearing, people were asking me about it who had never heard about Bitcoin. So now if you think about, we were in Texas and everybody, 1 or 2 people, they all go to a different state. So hopefully whatever I said to them at lunch, at breakfast, during this meeting, planted some kind of seed for them to then go back to their school, bring it back to even just their friend group. Hey, this random girl was talking about Bitcoin. Have you heard of it? And just that can really change, somebody's life forever. If you don't buy Bitcoin now, if you buy Bitcoin now, your life's going to be way different than if you never did. And if I can be that person to help you, realize that you need it, that's what I'm really trying to do. So again, just talking about Bitcoin in my everyday life, when I travel, I wear merch. I try to, put little tags on my bags or, anything that says Bitcoin. That way people will ask me about it. Anytime I have a school project, I'm making it about Bitcoin. For example, I'm in the honors college. So what that means is you have to do an extra project on top of the class you're already taking to prove that you have honors. So I have to make my own projects to prove that I have honors because there's no honors classes for finance, only for like the marine science and all of those classes. So I always do some kind of Bitcoin project. Right now I'm trying to come up with a project focused around the new Bitcoin mortgages. And I'm doing a real estate finance class, so I'm trying to, bring those things together. And my teacher's like, this is a short class. You only got 4 weeks left. Are you sure you want to do this? And I always say yes, because even if it's a lot of work, even if I'm staying up for 24 hours to get this paper done on the last day, if I can be close to publishing something about Bitcoin or even just turning something in about Bitcoin, it's changing that teacher's mind. It's changing whoever's class that I'm taking it in mind. Like, no matter what happens, if I have Bitcoin in my life and I'm teaching other people about it, maybe they'll also join the movement. Okay, so something new. I just got an internship with FOMO 21. Yes. So this is my first internship and also just a really big deal because I thought I was going to have to settle and be like some financial advisor internship or something. And I really didn't want to do that. I know that I could, but I just really didn't want to. And FOMO 21 is a Bitcoin only apparel company. And through this internship, it's kind of based around marketing, solely AI marketing, but also the ins and outs of business, the ins and outs of working with people who have a Bitcoin only company, the people that I'm going to meet, the places that I'm going to go. Because of this internship, I'm really excited. I just started this week. So, but it really is about it being culture. like I said, you may think it's silly to wear a Bitcoin on your shirt, but just by doing that, you can spark a conversation with someone in the grocery store, and you could change their life just from one conversation. And if anyone can tell you that one conversation changes your life, like, it's me. The amount of 15-minute phone calls I've had with people on Zoom that like changed where I went in my life or what I did next, it's really crazy what just a conversation can do. And also I have to plug myself, so you can use my last name, code Hanson, for 10% off. And also I have like my business cards up here, so if you want to grab one of those before you leave, the link goes right to it. So it'll be super easy for you. And now I'm here with all of you. Yay! So I put some of my friends that are in the Bitcoin meetup, and it really just shows that, you know, no matter where you go, you don't have to go to a super big conference. You don't have to travel the world. You don't have to have a Bitcoin internship. You just have to be part of a community. And every single one of you here today came because you wanted to be a part of that community. And we have this group now that's kind of like a family. And you may think of it like you don't really know these people, but these are the people that get you. These are the like-minded people that you need in your life. So if you're hanging out with your friends that don't get it, maybe start thinking about how these are your friends and these are your people. Because if you surround yourself with Bitcoin people, Bitcoin will become a part of your life. And if you're not surrounded like around Bitcoin people, try to make them Bitcoin people. So why is Bitcoin leadership? Hopefully you got kind of a good understanding because of everything I just talked about with leadership in my life. But people often think leadership is just, you know, power, a title, you're a boss, you're in charge of something. But it's about having the courage, having the initiative, having the integrity to do the right thing when nobody is watching. It teaches us all of that just through being Bitcoin itself, through the way that it's written. And I put this quote here. This is a quote that has been in my Instagram bios for a very long time. And it says, "It only has to make sense to you." And I've lived by that quote my whole life because I have always been told, "Oh, you're crazy about this," or, you know, I could stay after and talk to you about a lot of conspiracies that I have. And people would always say, you know, "You're crazy." But I think it only has to make sense to you. So if you feel like you're going out and you're the only Bitcoiner in the room, it only has to make sense to you. If you can go make it make sense to other people, you know, gold star, you did something good today. But if you can't, it doesn't matter because you have the Bitcoin and they don't. And that's the whole point, is it only has to make sense to you. And at the end of the day, you have to only worry about yourself. But if you can bring people along with you along the way, it just makes it all the better. So the call to action, it starts with you, kind of like what I already talked about, but you gotta talk to anybody that you can about Bitcoin. You can share a book, you can share a podcast, you can share a link. If you see a meme, post it on your story. You may feel nervous to talk about Bitcoin or identify with it on your social media or wear a shirt in public that says that you like Bitcoin because you don't want people to, you know, see that you like it because you may be different or you may be exiled. But if every single person just clicks the share button on one thing, we're sharing it, we're creating the movement, and we're making it much bigger than what it is right now. Bitcoin community has grown so much from the very beginning, but it could be so much more. And it's not the people who speak or go to conferences, it's the people who buy Bitcoin and who tell their friends about it and their family members and help each other, because at the end of the day, we only have each other. And I'm really, you know, happy that I could tell you guys everything about my story and about my life, but I hope that you can take a little bit away from it and go into your communities, whether it's your family, whether it's your work environment, and just start to bring Bitcoin into your life. I think it will really improve everything in your life. So thank you for listening. So does anybody have any questions?
Yes.
You're real cute.
Thank you.
You're fun.
Thank
And
you.
I really wish you a lot of success.
Thank you so much.
So I have a question for you. Today it's easy for everybody to kind of talk about Bitcoin because, it's the biggest one. It's got a lot of attention from the government and from private companies and all that. However, in 2016, you were already
Mhm.
focused on Bitcoin. This is very interesting for me. In 2016, it was very different than today.
Right.
So my question is, how did you focus on Bitcoin and not on XRP or ETH or
Okay.
why Bitcoin?
I love that question. And I am a pro Bitcoin only type of girl. So the reason that I was so focused is because it's the one that I understood the most. There's a start to finish of how it works. There's a code, it's written, it can't be changed, and I could understand and I could get behind like a finite supply. I could get behind these people who are already buying into it. In 2016, it's already been around for like 7 years. So it had its time before I found it. But I never looked into the other ones because I just knew that Bitcoin was the one. And maybe that is part of my intuitive feeling inside that I just feel so attached to Bitcoin and I feel that it's my purpose. But I truly never looked into the other ones. And I don't invest in any other ones besides Bitcoin because I truly feel that it will drive the value of everything else to zero. So why not put all your value into it?
I like it.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So you're in college as an economic major,
Mhm.
meaning you're probably dealing with people that have teachers who have never taken the time to learn about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
What has that been like with your teachers? Like
Mm.
stories wise, how have they challenged you, their feedback, and any success stories turning orange filling into teachers?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to talk about this one teacher who I still work with him now. So I took his class. It was the student managed investment class. So we actually have $1 million in our fund that we manage for the school's endowment of 150 million, say. So we have about 100 million of those dollars. And it's kind of like a stock room. We're all in different groups and we all have different sectors and we have to research stocks and do a stock pitch. And then we had to find a practitioner in the field. I stretched that a little because I thought in the field is whatever the field is, you can make the field. So I met this guy on LinkedIn who worked for PitchBook, which is kind of like Bloomberg, if you know what that is. It's like a research platform, but they also have a lot of crypto focused research. So I asked my teacher, hey, could I do it for this guy who works at PitchBook? And my teacher said, you can, but let's not make it about crypto. And it's always just I didn't say I was going to make it about crypto. And you're just assuming because they know I'm that type of person. So I didn't, I tried not to make it about crypto, but I still kind of made it about crypto because that's just what I do. And now he invited me back to redo the class again as a portfolio manager. So I'll actually be kind of leading a team. And we do summer watch calls to watch the fund and stuff. And he brings up this thing called Bitcoin Depot, which is a Bitcoin ATM. And it's a stock called BTM. And he's like, hey, Madison, what do you think about this? And I'm like, me? What are you talking about? And he's like, there's this Bitcoin stock. What do you think about it? Should we invest in it? I'm like, okay, did you do any fundamental research on it? Or are you just asking me because you want to hear my opinion? And he's like, well, just based on what it is, do you think it's good? And I'm like, I don't really know. I have to do research on it. And that's kind of my point is teachers will think oh, she knows Bitcoin. She knows everything about Bitcoin. She knows every company that has Bitcoin involved in it. And they think it's a lot smaller than what it is. So I feel like I've kind of almost orange pilled that teacher because it went from no, don't make it about crypto to what do you think about this BTM Bitcoin stock? And then hopefully, we ask more and more questions and I can actually maybe do a presentation about Bitcoin in class. But I've also had teachers who want nothing to do with it at all. So when I talked about bringing Bitcoin into my projects, if I'm like, hey, can I do a project about Bitcoin? They're just say no. I'm like, why? Like, it has all these things and everything that you want, and I'll write 3 extra pages for you. And they're like, no, like, I don't even want to, grade a paper about Bitcoin. I don't know anything about Bitcoin. Like, let's just focus on, our traditional finance. So I try my best with orange pilling as many people as I can, but I will say the teachers are the hardest because you want to be respectful because they're your teachers, but then also you want to be respected. So people like don't respect you because you're, less than them as a student, but they are kind of mad at the fact that you know more about Bitcoin than them. So then there's like a weird power dynamic between who knows more about the topic, but who has more authority in the room. So it's a balance, but I try my best to orange pill. Yes.
A good friend of mine's daughter is starting at FGCU this fall, and I would like to direct her towards
Yes.
your club. How's the process work for new students coming in? Is there a whole set of clubs that they go visit and figure out which ones they want to join?
Yeah.
Or what is the process so I can direct her?
Yeah, of course. So at FGCU, we have like over 200 registered student organizations. So there's a lot of different clubs. Not all of them are super active, but when they come on campus, there'll be some kind of, fair where all of the clubs will be set up who want to, present themselves. And she can walk around and see, do I want to go to this club or not? Or you can just follow the Instagram pages. So if you take one of my cards, you can just go to the Crypto FGCU Instagram. And then there's a page called Eagle Link, which she'll learn about that. But this is basically a hub where you can go see all of the different clubs and all of the meetings will be posted and you can say RSVP to this meeting. And yeah, for like my club, we do meetings. We try to do once a month, but now I think we'll be doing twice a month just because of all the people I've met for guest speaking. I try to like do more community based where we're hanging out and talking and eating food, and then we'll do like a guest speaker.
So will you be there this fall, or you?
Yes, I'll be here for the whole last year. So I graduate in spring of 26.
And I think she's like a philosophy or psychology major. Do you have
Okay.
different
Yeah.
majors in your group, or are they all finance?
Yeah, so I found that when I started advertising the club to the whole school, I got a lot more people because the finance people are stuck on their traditional finance. So
Yeah.
I kind of moved honestly out of the College of Business and I started just posting, and I live in a scholarship house, so I live with 18 people. So 18 people in 18 different clubs, the word gets out. So I think that having people from all over the school makes the club a bigger community and a lot more inclusive. And we don't really focus on like the numbers and we don't do finance equations. We just talk about kind of the stuff that I told you today.
One more question.
Sure.
It doesn't have anything to do with the other, but you had mentioned Bitcoin-backed mortgages.
Yes.
I'm curious where that's at. I saw there was a ruling that they have to accept Bitcoin now as collateral, but it can't be on a hard wallet. It has to be on it. Now,
Yes.
do you know any more about that?
I don't know much about it, but all I know is it is allowed now and it's happening and you can back your mortgage with Bitcoin. What I'm trying to do my project on is create like some kind of simulated data that will show hundreds of different kinds of people who may have Bitcoin and different credit scores and stuff to see like, does that help your approval if you are backing it with Bitcoin rather than something else? But I don't have like much info on that. In 5 weeks, I'll have a nice paper written, but you gotta give me a little bit of time, yeah.
I'll check it in 5 weeks.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, where are you from originally?
I'm from Inglewood, Florida, so it's just an hour and a half north.
And you live on campus?
Yes.
And then my second question is, I was looking up your website that you intern for,
Yes.
and I've looked up other websites. Why do they make such ugly Bitcoin clothes for women? For women, we need
So-
a designer to design something.
Listen, grab my card, we'll meet next week, and you tell me some designs
I
that you
will.
want to see. And then I just bring it right to work that week and we make it happen.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay.
What's Aaron and Weirdo's wife's like clothing line? What's it called? So it was amazing.
Just Lena's art.
What is it?
Just Lena's art.
That's his wife
Just
now?
Lena's.
I think there's a company on it.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm.
Why, whose wife was she
I thought it
before?
was his
Fact
girlfriend.
check me.
Yeah.
You would have liked some of the
There you
clothes we
go.
had there.
Yeah, look
Really?
into that. Maybe she's got more.
I have never seen any really cute.
The reason I'm asking is I have a 21 and a 25-year-old,
Mhm.
and they're both getting into all of this. Bringing them here, they don't want to come because it's a bunch of people with mom. And
Yeah.
so, do you offer anything, or do you know of anything for like that age group?
So technically, right, we don't have like outside students come in because like you can't check them in on the QR code, but I'm the one there. And
Okay.
within, I'll tell you a funny story. With like my first, I don't know if it was my first one or my second club meeting I ever had. I was going around the room checking like the 4 people that were there in, and one guy goes, "Oh, I don't have a QR code." I'm like, "Oh, no problem. I can just put in your school email." He's like, "I don't go here." I'm like, "What? How did you get here? Like, what is going on?" And he's like, "I just found it on Instagram and I wanted to come." And I'm like, "Okay, well, that's awesome. Welcome." So if they want to come, like, it's just going to be me. We don't even have any advisors or anybody that comes. So if they want to come, they can at least make friends with people and make connections and join our group chat and all that stuff.
Okay. But they're usually like your age group, right?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
like 20 to 25.
Okay.
I have another question for you. This is something maybe you read a paper on. When I was working on my master's, I started asking people, mine was in health and wellness.
Yeah.
So I started asking people, doing surveys. And I was getting all different age groups, what their educational background was, nobody's name or anything like that, just getting statistics on what they thought was the best. I cut out pictures of Victoria's Secret models, cut their heads off,
Yeah.
and I had a theory to prove or disprove. The guys would pick the girls that had a voluptuous body versus a skinny body,
Of course.
and the girls all picked that they wanted to look like the skinny body versus the voluptuous one. So it was backwards. So I found that very fascinating, interesting, and it was across the board, all age groups. So whenever, I like statistics for some stupid reason. So whenever I go out with a group and I see young people, such as if you go to a restaurant and there are valets and you're waiting for your car and you're chit-chatting for a minute, I ask them if they're in crypto.
Yeah.
And I find it fascinating. Some are, some aren't.
Yeah.
And when I play golf, there's one young kid who's very into all of that, and the others haven't got a clue. So that might be a focus for you to ask about. Start asking people out in the street.
Mhm.
Ask
Yeah.
people my age, so older people, not just young people,
Exactly.
and find out how this is moving. If
Mhm.
it's moving and people are being indoctrinated into Bitcoin now or crypto.
Right. And I think,
And you'll find some very interesting statistics.
yeah, I feel like I'm super fortunate because of my dad and me being so close with my dad. He saw the power of Bitcoin and kind of brought me under his wing as I grew up. But you don't know. Some of those kids' parents might, they might go home to their parents saying, "That is a terrible investment. That's bad money. That's dirty money. That's for gambling, or that's for drugs. That's for the black market." You don't know what parents are telling their kids. And
That's
if
right.
you hear that this money is for the black market, why would you want to be a part of it? So that's why, people like me hopefully can be a light in people's life who aren't seeing that side of
I
it.
find that people that are very educated, my son's a lawyer, and he wouldn't touch Bitcoin with a 10-foot pole. It's all about real estate.
Yeah.
And my grandson, who's 12, thinks Bitcoin's stupid because of the parents. So that's why I find this fascinating. Yet when you go out and you talk to other people, there are people that are interested now because when they turn on their Fox Business News, they see the Bitcoin banner running
Yeah.
across and they're becoming interested. And I've been a member of this club for about, I don't know, 7 years, and I've seen it go up, really grow to a big group. And then it dwindled down to hardly anybody. There was like 5 or 6, I call, 5 or 6 of us that would come all the time.
Wow.
And then, once they started talking, once Trump
Mm-hmm.
got
And then it's
into
like
office,
100,000.
there were all kinds of people we never saw before came.
Right.
And to be interested, and I was just saying today that some of those people that were probably 60, 65 years old haven't come back. They were asking questions to us that have been in it.
Mhm.
Because they've gone back and maybe they decided this isn't for them. But I have several friends that now all of a sudden sitting up and paying attention.
Right.
And as Michael Saylor says, you've got people that buy Bitcoin at the price they deserve to buy it at.
Exactly. That's
So, this is just something that when you're young enough to
Mhm.
see on how that goes on a graph.
Oh,
How
yeah.
people, all age groups, how they're becoming interested or not.
absolutely.
And
So start asking.
kind of like reflecting, just kind of piggybacking on what you said. When I first met her, like I was like, oh my gosh, she's so much younger than me. They're like, what they're going to build. She grew up with Bitcoin. She's
Right.
16. She learned at 16. There's people now that are learning. Like I meet people like at the conference. They learned at like 10, 11, 12. So they're gonna be the people that are building on top of this, and they're gonna know and understand it from such a deep level. They're gonna build and build and build on top of it, and that's how early we still are. Even though it seems like we're late, but people like price goes up, people are more interested.
Right.
Like our conference a couple of years ago, when there was a bear market, there was half the amount of people. So it's the same thing, and people are drawn to price. You get it at the price you
It's
deserve.
amazing.
I'll
isn't
buy
it?
it when it dips. It dips, they don't buy it. And then they buy it more. It's just, that's part of the learning journey. Everyone in here, Madison, me, Maddie, Paul, John, we're all learning. No one knows it all, and we continue to learn more and more and more, because it's still only, it's just now like, what, 18 years old, it's just now an adult.
Madison, is the university teaching any coding or on blockchain? I mean, the technical stuff.
Yes, actually. So in the fall, I'm taking a blockchain applications class. So that's really
At the
exciting.
university. Oh,
At the
oh, nice.
university, it's the first class that they offer that like has to do with any of that, and I think they have it like tucked under either information systems or entrepreneurship. So of course, there's not a Bitcoin major yet, but I think that this is the first class that is kind of testing that out. Not sure what it will entail, but I think just being able to say that I took a blockchain applications class is going to be really good for the career I'm trying to go into.
Do you guys get to talk about certain things off the blockchain that makes Bitcoin so good, like decentralization, nodes, and peer-to-peer?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I start the class in August, so I'll find out then. It's 16 weeks of it, but hopefully there's only like one teacher that teaches it, and it only happens once a year. So because there's so few people that want to do it, they'll only offer it in the fall. So then if you heard about it in the spring, then you would have to wait again till the fall to take it. So it's very new, but it's exciting.
John, you had a gentleman that graduated from Florida Gulf Coast. He was talking about Bitcoins and mortgages.
CJ.
Yeah, CJ Constantinos.
Do you know who he is?
Yeah, well, he was at Bitcoin Day Tampa, so you saw him. He's the one that did his People's Reserve, and he's the one that stood up, had a solo presentation about
He's going to be in town soon.
Bitcoin
We'll get him
mortgages.
here.
We're going to introduce him to
And
you.
you'll-
Yeah, that would be
You need to
helpful.
talk to him about your paper.
He
Yeah.
needs to do a
Yeah.
presentation. He can probably help you with a presentation.
I can let this connect.
Cool. Yes.
This is my first time here.
Oh.
Somebody on Reddit said that Bitcoin was a scam, and someone else said it was just magic internet money. How do you respond to people like that?
Wow. She thought I was almost done.
You gotta be very slow with him because, he's a newbie.
Right.
You gotta be very slow.
No, honestly though, when people tell me like, "Oh, Bitcoin is a scam," or "Why are you putting your money into that?" I just say 21 million, and they're like, "What?" I'm like, "There's only 21 million," and they're like, "Well, what does that have to do with anything?" And I'm like, "Well, how many dollars are there?" And they're like, well, and I'm like, exactly. And how many dollars get printed every day? And they're like, well, I don't know. Do they really print dollars every day? And I'm like, yeah, they do. And then they're like, oh, I didn't even know that. And I'm like, well, I think you should find out the problem before I tell you the solution. And that's kind of where I leave it, because if you don't even know that there's a problem, I don't want to tell you about Bitcoin, because you don't even know that the money that you have in your pocket is worthless. And I think that from that moment on, I've had a lot of people go back home, maybe look up a TikTok video or something, and then they send me a text like a week later. So where should I buy Bitcoin? They're like, is there a website? And then, you teach them the whole process. And I've done that with probably 10 to 12 people since I started the crypto club. So I have like a pretty good track record. It just takes you a few times. You're not going to tell someone about it for the first time and then they're going to go home and buy it. It may take 7 to 15 times before it really clicks and they go home and start researching it for themselves.
You can go to the Senate and you will find this exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So I see some new faces in the room. I don't know if you are beginners or not beginners, but if anybody has any questions at all about Bitcoin, not necessarily about how she orange pills people, but about the Bitcoin network itself and how it works. Does anybody have any questions like that for Madison?
He has a question. Maybe I'll ask you.
My son-in-law actually asked this question. It has to do with running nodes, and I asked this gentleman gave a pretty good explanation, but I'm going to ask the group. So I heard recently there's anywhere from 100 to 200,000 nodes running, but the ones that run like for 24/7, there might only be 20,000. So my son-in-law said, what would keep some sovereign nation or from some huge company from running thousands and thousands of nodes and basically affecting the direction of Bitcoin and changing things that nodes are supposed to protect?
Can the new guy explain that one?
Wait. Can you answer that?
I think from my perspective, the reason that not every single company just has their own thousands of nodes is because it's the energy that you have to use to, create it. For the actual mining to occur, you have to have a lot of energy, and power costs money. But there's other options that people have explored, using volcanoes as energy, using the waves in the water as energy for mining. Energy is unlimited. We just have to find out how to make it. But when people are using the power and it's costing them more money than it's going to be helping them, they're going to be focused more on profits rather than focusing on helping the
My
movement.
understanding was it didn't cost much to run.
Yeah, it doesn't. So you mixed up miners with nodes. That's fine.
Nodes are basically people running the actual Bitcoin software. And the way Bitcoin works, it works for our enemies, works for us, works for anyone. So they're more incentivized to play by the rules than try to change Bitcoin. Because if they change Bitcoin, people aren't just going to go change with them. Like if I run a node and you now put a new node in with the new software, I have to update my node to your software. So the consensus all have to update to the new software. So it's not like you just go plug in the node and just change the software and people won't update into that new software.
Even if I were to run thousands of them.
Good. You'd have to buy enough to take over 51% of the network and run that,
You have to spend all that money.
which is not impossible. But then you'd also have to get the miners. So that it's not just the nodes make changes to the network, but the miners have to agree as well.
Anyway, that was his question. And
That's a good
There's around
question.
80,000, I think, active nodes right now. But what you're referring to is called a Cypher attack. But at the end of the day, the nodes that have a lot of that, the voting power and hash power, it's very easy to kind of defend against that. There's more honest participants are obviously going to respond if that were to happen. And all they could really run is software. Right now there's kind of that's actually kind of happening right now in the community. There's knots and there's core right now, kind of like having it out. And you kind of anybody can run whatever version of Bitcoin they want, right? I mean, that's kind of part of how the network works. So
when this whole knots and core thing came up, I learned something new. That I went and I did a search, and I learned that there's like a dozen different Bitcoin software applications that you can choose from. I didn't know that. I had no idea.
BSB
Forks.
There's
They're not forks.
BSB, they all like, we tried changing the software, they just forked off.
Yeah,
Something completely different because people weren't running that node.
but there's
That software.
but the Bitcoin software is that, like right now we have Bitcoin Core is the main one that most everybody uses, but there are a dozen other ones that you can use, and Knots is the one that's becoming more popular, or is the second most popular. But there are others, and I don't remember the names of them. But they're not different forks. They're just running Bitcoin software through a different application.
It doesn't really get you anywhere. I mean, miners are the ones who propose the blocks, so it's kind of like it's almost like breaking into a bank. You know how they have the two doors where like you break into the first door, but like you can't get into the actual bank where you go in to do an ATM.
Yeah.
It's like you can't really do much. Everything kind of fits together like a puzzle and works together. So any one little area is not really vulnerable to attack. You would really have to overwhelm the network via mining power to do a 51% attack to really have any meaningful attack on the network.
Can
You know, running
explain
different. Yeah.
Why then it's recommended that I run a node?
Why the reason you run your own node is so you can verify the data. Like if you're transacting with Bitcoin, for example, if you're a business that's accepting or using Bitcoin, you know, you really want to see the actual blockchain. You want to make sure that when somebody comes up and they send you a transaction, that you're actually verifying for yourself, okay, is this a legitimate transaction, right? For the average person day to day, it's not super important. I mean, but if you're a business or as we move to a more Bitcoin economy in the future, it could be much more meaningful where you really want to verify, okay, 20 people just came in and paid, you know, are these real transactions? Are they double spending? You know, that's kind of why you run a node. Like mining pools run nodes, businesses run nodes. I mean, you can run a personal node, but you'd want to spend some time to do some research to learn about it. You know, Bam Bam back there helps me with my node. So he's a good guy to talk to about it. Yeah, he will. Yeah. So, you know, but that's why you would want to run a node.
Yeah, the more people running nodes, the more secure the network is.
True. I mean, again, there's mathematical proofs and stuff about how many nodes we really need, and you know, is more really better? I mean, there's all these questions that can be debated within the community and through different people, and then you've got different versions, like we said, the knots thing and the core thing, and you know, the knots people they want to make sure that there's no non-financial transactions, and they don't, you know, necessarily like that people can buy block space and put whatever they want in it. You know, this is a debate that the community has to have, and if you don't want to store that data on your node, you don't have to. You know, so there's different, you know.
Most people I ask, you know, do you run a node? They go, say that again.
Yeah.
And that's like, and these are Bitcoiners I'm asking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are hundreds of nodes and miners that nobody knows about.
I
Go to Kazakhstan or China or Russia. They're just in the middle of
There's tons of nodes. It's kind of like everybody uses cell phones, but does everybody run a cell phone tower? It's like kind of similar to that, but not quite. You know, running a node is a little bit more important, but I'm just kind of using an analogy. In the future, not everybody will run a node. There will be people that trusted nodes, and you know, that trust reputation can be very quickly lost if you violate that trust.
You do it one time.
You do it one time, you're done, right? So like people kind of trust, okay, Coinbase is running a node or this mining pool is running a node, and you trust them until they violate that trust, and then they will never have that trust again, right? So it's a reputation-based system type thing. And what they found when, you know, even if back in the day people talk about the Silk Road, you know, the Silk Road pretty much just ran on reputation. If you were a seller on the Silk Road, like selling whatever you were selling, like it was a purely, there was no like customer support number to call. There was none of that. It was like, hey, this seller has a reputation. Here's how people have reviewed and rated him. He's got a, you know, 4.8 stars out of 5, right? Okay, people are going to trust that seller. So node is kind of similar. Everybody kind of trusts, you know, the node provider that they use. But the beautiful part about Bitcoin is you don't have to trust anybody. You can run your own node if you want. So if you have that curiosity and you want to learn more about it, there's plenty of videos online to kind of learn why it's important. You can learn about it. And eventually, you know, I advise if you're really interested in Bitcoin and you're really passionate about it, run your own node. I mean, you can still run a node on like such a super, like I use a Raspberry Pi from like with a hard drive that I bought 8 years ago, and it still stores the whole Bitcoin blockchain. And there's all this fighting about stuff about knots and core and what's spam and what's not spam. I'm like, yo, like I bought this hard drive like 8 years ago and it still runs the whole blockchain. Is this really that big of a deal? In my opinion, no, it's not. I think it's largely will be decided by transaction fees on the network. If that demand increases, running non-financial things on that blockchain will just not make financial sense. There's other blockchains to do that stuff with where it makes more sense. It just doesn't make sense on Bitcoin. But that spam filter will be decided by the money, the fee itself, not by any third parties deciding what's spam and what's not spam and all this other stuff. That's my personal opinion.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Like, those kind of questions are what make people you kind of need to understand how people that don't understand anything about Bitcoin, their questions, because those are good questions. And you can learn from that question. Like I just learned something because you just asked that. And that's just how like you continue to learn. But if you don't know anything about it, and someone asks that question, it's like, oh, what is they talking about? And you get more clarity, and you do your own research, and you talk to people that actually understand the technical aspects of Bitcoin. And it's very mind-blowing.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing, because like everybody, when you first come in, it's like, oh, it's $117,000. Like, what does that mean with all of this? And that's like the hardest thing. And I like annoy Maddie a lot when I come in.
You don't annoy me at all. I enjoy answering the simple questions and helping however I can. Everybody's at different places in their journey down this rabbit hole, right? So Bitcoin's like an onion. You keep peeling back layers, and there's all this.
Once you realize you know something, then you're like, oh shit, I know absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And it continues to humble you. And that's the cool thing about a lot of Bitcoiners is like we all had to be humble to know that we didn't know anything to start that journey. And then everyone's on a different part of that journey. And it's been really meeting people where they are on that journey. Because we were there once, and then there's no such thing as a stupid question. Because we all were stupid at one point.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get more knowledge and learn more, and then, I remember when I had that same question, but then I learned, and I was like, I have more conviction now because I learned about that. But I used to have that same question. So.
I got a question about the mortgages, like, if you could put Bitcoin for collateral, just use round number, say it's $200,000 on a house, Bitcoin's allocated $100,000. So they usually say you got to put down 20%. So if you put up like $40,000 worth of Bitcoin, it'd be like 4/10 of Bitcoin, correct?
So again, I'm not
saying,
super familiar with what CJ's doing. We could probably have him come in.
I was wondering, like, if you put up like say like 4/10 of Bitcoin, but Bitcoin now goes up to 200,000. Okay, now do I have to put up 2/10 of Bitcoin, or what do I have to?
Well, Bitcoin goes up and you put up, you're actually going to be over collateralized now. So
That's
you can
what I'm
probably
saying.
pull back.
You think
If you wanted to, you could probably take some of that collateralization back. But if the price of Bitcoin goes down, you might have to add more Bitcoin. So it really depends on the lending product. It depends, like, I know lenders that do all sorts of different ways, whether it's salt or leaden or what CJ's doing. I mean, there's so many different options.
We're still really
Unchained, I think some people. So there's a lot of different, like, this is in its infancy, and we're still like, and a lot of it's a la carte. Like, we're working with a couple high net worth individuals that have tons of Bitcoin that, like, we can negotiate with the lender. Hey, this guy's got 50 Bitcoin or 100 Bitcoin. He wants to do this. Like, can you give a better rate? Can you, can you drop the collateralization requirements? Can you make it so if we add an extra 2%, can we do non-liquidation? So even if the price of Bitcoin goes down, you guys won't liquidate the loan. So there's all these different factors that can be played with, and we're still really in the infancy of these products. I don't know exactly what CJ's doing. He wants to come on the podcast here soon, and we got to meet with him because he was telling you about that he wants to announce kind of what he's been doing.
His
so
rates
we'll talk about his rates, and we'll crunch that soon, and I'll let you guys know about that. But yeah, I mean, definitely want to give CJ some business when the time comes, and he's got it all kind of figured out. So, but my guess is it might be you have to over collateralize, and then but I don't know. I just don't know at this point.
He was just on Bitcoin Magazine today. They just interviewed him live. So
really?
If you want to hear the latest, you can check out Bitcoin Magazine's channel.
It's cool.
Yep.
Yeah, he's last I heard he was talking about 1-to-1 collateral, so 100% collateral, and then you have to have if you're buying a house, right? So 1-to-1, and then
What does it mean? Make an example.
if you're gonna buy a borrow $100,000, so you have to put up one whole Bitcoin, right? And so then with one whole Bitcoin, they'll give you the $100,000, and then the house is also going to be counted as collateral, the real estate that you're buying with it is going to be counted as collateral. But then as the price of Bitcoin appreciates, then you pull back your Bitcoin.
The idea is so you don't have to sell your Bitcoin.
So you don't, yeah.
You don't have to
the
sell
whole
your
point
Bitcoin
is
to
you
buy
don't
the
sell
house.
your Bitcoin to buy the house.
You pretty much keep all your
Borrow
Bitcoin.
against it.
What do they do with the Bitcoin when they keep it?
It just sits in a wallet as collateral. You know, it's pristine collateral. One Bitcoin is one Bitcoin, right? So like, you know, it doesn't change. The price of Bitcoin changes, but it is what it is. So it's a way
They're
to.
not lending it out. or
They're not
something.
lending
No,
it.
They're
Yeah.
never rehypothecating, and they always have proof of reserves. That's what's unique about them too.
But that also depends on the lender, right? So like maybe some lenders will do that. Maybe that's what BlockFi and some of these other Celsius, maybe that's what they were doing, and that's
They
why
were.
they failed. So yeah, so
BlockFi was
but
definitely.
they were rehypothecating, but they were giving you a percentage of that. So you, I mean, every deal is
screen.
yeah, that's what they were telling you. Yeah, but I mean,
But you're still giving up your custody of your Bitcoin.
yeah. Well, there's some systems that you can do that are like multi-sig, so that way you put it in a place and nobody can access it unless you both three people or two people all sign together at the same time. So you know that they can't take it and they know that you can't take it. You got to come together and sign together to do it, right?
There's a company called Anchor Watch that has a really good product
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, my understanding is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will not let you do a multi-sig. They're gonna be willing to give up custody in order to.
Every lender's different, so
Yeah.
what you're referring to something completely different though, Bam Bam. What you're referring to is that now what the Trump administration and the rest of the team up there is saying, I think it's Pulte, the guy who's running the FHA, the Federal Housing Administration. What has recently come out is if you are applying for a mortgage, this is totally separate than using Bitcoin as collateral for lending process. This is a normal traditional mortgage. You go to your mortgage broker and you talk to them and you say, hey, I want to get a loan. I want to get 10% or down, 20% down, 3% down, FHA loans, all these other loans. What they're saying is now they're directing the mortgage brokers to say, hey, if this guy's got a bunch of crypto, we can look at it and say, oh, this is its value. And he can use that as a qualification to qualify for a loan. So therefore it's saying like, hey, like, you know, you have a job that makes $100K a year, but you don't quite, meet the requirements for this house that you want to buy that's $10 million or $5 million, whatever, $3 million house. You can't buy it. Your salary is too low. The guy says, oh, but I have stocks. And they say, okay, we'll look at your stocks. Okay, your stock portfolio is $200,000, not enough. But then you can say, oh, but I've got Bitcoin and Ethereum, and it's worth $1 million. And they'll say, okay, now we can use that to qualify you for this loan. That's what they're talking about. But what you're saying is also that they're not just going to look at your hot wallet or your cold wallet. They want it to be sent to a custodial platform to verify that you have control of it and it's there. What I tell people, it's not that big of a deal. You can send it, qualify, and then take it back. That's my thought. So, you know.
So Pulte, he's given a directive to Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, but these two have to yet issue a guideline to actually be, any lender to accept the Bitcoin or, well, he didn't even say Bitcoin, he said crypto. In crypto, I would hate to see, I'm a broker on the lending side. I would hate to see a lender telling me accept SOL, SOL, as a collateral on it. I mean, that if it is Bitcoin, I am completely 100% on it. The other ones, I have no idea.
Well, I mean,
guidelines need to be yet to be written, and that's going to take. Frank Magic, they're going to take a year or so.
Yeah, I don't know about all that, but what I do know is that when you move an asset to Coinbase, whether it's Ethereum, Chainlink, whatever it is, Dogecoin, it can be sold and liquidated, if you need to. It has that value. So same like a stock, it can go up and down. Same like everything else, they're going to treat it as, if the market says it has a value, that's what they're going to treat it as, right?
Right, but that's pristine collateral, nobody can beat Bitcoin, so.
I do agree. I agree with that, but we're not talking about collateral. This isn't for collateral. This is.
No, I'm talking about the Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae.
Yeah, but you're not providing that as collateral. You're just showing that you have certain assets. It's different than what CJ's using Bitcoin for as a tool to borrow against. Yeah, but I'm saying as like.
He's using it as a bond, CJ's. So And I like them. I like.
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
those products are good if you're,
Yes.
you're borrowing against your Bitcoin. But these other products are like, they don't care whether you have Enron stock. If it has a market value, their job is to just say, what does the market say the value is? Okay, that's how much value it has. And they're just taking that into consideration so they can qualify you for a loan. They're not going to take opinions on, what's good, what's bad, what they like, what they don't like, which I think that's how it should be. Just what does the market say? That's what you have. It's what it is.
So I got one question, one more for you. I've been hearing college students taking out loans and buying Bitcoin with it. Student loans
Right.
and essentially betting on Bitcoin. Is that something you would recommend?
So personally, as a college student, if you already don't have that much money, I think that you should just use whatever you have left to just buy some Bitcoin. And I think that sometimes we get a little too critical with like what we're doing with it when, for example, my friend is always like asking me questions about how like this about Bitcoin and that about Bitcoin, and I'm telling her just to buy Bitcoin. Like you have a little bit of money and you don't need a big loan. You don't need thousands of dollars of Bitcoin at 20 years old. If you have 50 extra bucks from your paycheck, put it towards Bitcoin. And I think you don't need to know about it in order to buy it.
They have this unique ability to take out,
Yeah.
loans, and
Right.
I thought, man,
So-
if I was in college, I would have done
So
it.
I'll tell you a personal, because like I see what you're saying, and I'll tell you something personal. So for me, I'm debt free right now, going through college. So I've been able to pay for myself to go to college, and that's because of scholarships, and that's because of the government paying for my tuition through Bright Futures. And Florida Gulf Coast University isn't that expensive. So whatever money I have left over gets refunded right back to me. So anytime I get a refund check, I just buy Bitcoin. So to me, that's kind of like my student loan, but it's money that like I've earned and deserved and I never have to pay back. But for people my age, I don't see them really taking out loans, if really buying any. They would just buy it with like the little bit of money they have left on the side.
So you're using government, wait a minute, she's using government funds to buy Bitcoin.
Right. Government funds are paying for my school.
Yes.
And then I got 30 different scholarships through my school. And because of that, I've been able
Holy
to,
cow.
yes. So I, been able to pay for my rent, been able to explore Bitcoin, been able to do all of that stuff.
So the scholarships are from private organizations? then?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's all
So
from
it's not as
private
great as I
stuff
thought.
from where I'm from. Yeah.
Got it,
I
okay.
grew up in a really good town with a lot of good businesses and good Rotary clubs. And I did a lot in high school, just like I do now. So really paid off because being able to graduate debt free is something a lot of people can't say.
Oh, yeah.
So
What is the process of you buying Bitcoin? How do
I,
you buy it?
how I buy it, I go on my computer, or sometimes I just go on my phone and I have the app, or I go on the desktop and I use Swan normally for my bigger purchases. Go on Swan, my bank account's linked to it. I put how much I want to buy, I click buy, and then I close it out, and then that's it. Like,
You leave it there?
no, so you have to leave it on there for a little bit in order for it to like fully process, and like now you fully own it and it's in your wallet that we're watching for you. But then at that point, once I like actually own my Bitcoin on there, then I take it off and I hold it on cold storage. So you don't want to.
What cold storage do you use?
I had Ledger, but then I switched to Trezor, and I think that it's a lot better.
What's your social?
Yeah.
And you're beginning the blockchain class later this year, is that what?
Yes, in August.
Yeah, do you know who the instructor is?
No, I don't.
Well, perhaps you could suggest to them yourself as being a guest speaker.
Yes.
Throughout the session.
I think that would be great, and hopefully they'll allow me to do some kind of honors contract. That way I can learn more about Bitcoin through blockchain. I don't know how specific this class is and what route it's going to take, if it's even going to focus on Bitcoin or if it's really just going to focus on the application part. But I'll be around, so I'll let you all know how it goes.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm curious, since this is so new, what this professor's background is.
I know. I am also
Well,
curious.
blockchain's not new.
No, but I'd like to know what the.
Yeah, but the class is new.
The class
Yeah.
is new,
So
yeah.
The languages are not new, so, if anybody knows C++ or Python,
Mhm.
they can catch it up real fast.
Yeah.
And apply to the blockchain. But what is difficult for them, for any coder, is the philosophy, the principles of what and how a blockchain completely decentralized has to run.
Mhm.
That is the difficult part for them.
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe I'll be able to help my teacher out, and they'll be able to help me out too. Yeah.
When does your new YouTube podcast debut?
My new YouTube podcast. Wow, I wish I had the time to also do a YouTube podcast. I have like 16-hour days every day of the week, and then I spend my weekends on the computer. So I have lots of projects I'm working on right now, but in the future when I have a little bit more freedom, I'm not super into my student mode. I want to do more creative stuff because I think that it's really important to stay creative, and I'm not the type of person to go work a 9 to 5 or even work for somebody, so I'll have to figure out something else to do.
Do you own any meme coin?
No, I only invest in Bitcoin. Yeah.
Dave.
So on the blockchain, I heard recently that the difficulty, mining difficulty dropped a certain percentage. And, I delve into a little mining, and that's supposedly a good thing for me. And I guess I don't understand the whole difficulty. Is there anyone in here that can explain how that works?
The new guy.
Wait.
Yeah.
I just.
No, that's you. That's you. No, that's you.
Can you explain it, Madison?
I don't know what the question is. What do you mean? It's
The difficulty
The
adjustment.
difficulty adjustment.
So it's next level. Like that's what essentially keeps. It's almost like rate cuts from the Fed, right? But Matt does this for a living, so we should let him weigh in on this.
No, it's like the repo, right? It's like the repo money from the Fed. That's all it is.
Yeah.
So
It's go ahead.
Satoshi designed into the system a way to make it so that if more machines came on, they wouldn't just find more Bitcoin blocks and increase the inflation super quickly, right? That's kind of the genius behind the design of the consistent inflation rate. So in order to do that, he did something called a difficulty adjustment algorithm. And essentially what that means is that roughly every 2 weeks, I don't know off the top of my head how many blocks, I want to say it's
216.
Was it? No.
6102. 216.
216.
2016.
There you go. 2016. So roughly every 2016 blocks, which is roughly every 2 weeks, it tries to set it so that every 2 weeks is roughly 2016 blocks, right? And if the blocks are being found super, super quickly,
Like
it
if a
means
quantum computer
that there's more computers on the network. So the blockchain doesn't know how many computers, it doesn't know, are there more advanced computers? It doesn't know any of that. All it knows is that blocks are being found slightly more quickly. So that means the difficulty, what it does is it adjusts the difficulty up. So it makes the mathematical number that the machines have to hash to find a block, to have the privilege to publish the next block. It makes that number higher and harder to find, mathematically. So it's takes more time. It's a mathematical adjustment to find that magic number that gives you the ability to mine the next block, which happens roughly every 10 minutes.
And then also,
That's another zero to
it makes
numbers,
it,
right?
Exactly.
people unplug and it takes longer, it'll actually go the opposite way.
Which is what it apparently.
So
is.
blocks
Yeah.
took, instead of 10 minutes on average the past 2 weeks, they took 7% longer than 10 minutes. So, something along, we can do the math on it, ask Grok, ask it, whoever.
Sure, it goes both ways.
Yeah. Woke GPT, ask it, see what it says.
So with the difficulty adjustment, so how can quantum computer attack it?
So if you use quantum computers, you would find, so the argument is that the way quantum computers could attack Bitcoin is if they could solve those blocks much faster. And they were able to solve them. And so one entity was able to control 51% of the solutions. So 51% of the hash rate, essentially, right? It would solve blocks much faster. Now, if someone was able to do that, they'd probably make a lot more money just solving the blocks and keeping the Bitcoin, right? And trying to hide it for as long as possible and just support the network instead of trying to attack it. You would actually you'd basically be the next evolution of miner. You would, like, we went from CPUs to GPUs and GPUs to FPGAs and FPGAs to ASIC, what we have now. The next evolution may be some quantum type miner, right? And that's going to solve it 100 times, 200 times, 1,000 times better than the current miners, right? And if you have that ability to do it, you're just going to mine the Bitcoin blocks because every block you get a couple Bitcoin. So there's a much higher profit incentive to just contribute to the network to keep it going in a positive way.
Because the code after 2,000 blocks, give or take whatever the number.
Now it's going to adjust up.
Just way harder.
Yeah.
So it just said all that work we just did to build these quantum computers is now basically gone. Now you have to start over building computers even faster.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like an arms race, and your quantum computers it'll settle into roughly producing blocks every 10 minutes, right? So even with that increased hash rate that you get from having, quantum computing, guess those numbers or do it faster than the current computers do. So to answer your question back there, essentially, the difficulty adjustment algorithm just keeps everything in line so that roughly every 10 minutes, we've got a new block. So what that means is over the past 2 weeks, there was less hash power online. We solved blocks 7% slower than expected. So there's a couple of reasons for that. There's a conspiracy reason, and then there's the real reason. So let me know which one you want, and we can unpack them both. The conspiracy reason was, Trump came in like it was Return of the, what is it? What was the episode Return of the Jedi when they came in and they took down the Death Star? Yeah. So it's actually literally was kind of like that. I don't know if you guys heard the whole story about it, but apparently like some people in the military were watching that like specific installation for like years. So they knew every little fucking detail. They're probably sitting there on a satellite camera and just like looking at it, seeing exactly what they're doing. So they knew that there was this giant shaft that led deep under the ground. And it was only about, I think it was like 5 feet, like the size of this table pretty much. It was like an air shaft. And what they had noticed the past week or two before the attacks happened is that they were trying to cover up the shaft with concrete to try to prevent it. So essentially what happened is we took these bombers in, and these bombers, essentially the first one blew up the concrete over the shaft, and the other bombers shot it down like Luke Skywalker in the freaking Return of the Jedi. And it literally went all the way down, and that's how we blew it up inside. They just shut down the pipe, and so pretty impressive mission for trillions of dollars we spent on the military. They executed pretty damn well. So that's what happened there. So the conspiracy theory for the hash rate going down was that instead of trying to build nuclear bombs down there, they're actually mining Bitcoin. So that was a conspiracy because there was a correlation with the difficulty adjustment and with us blowing up their nuclear facilities. So correlation does not always apply causality.
We don't need to worry about that.
The real reason is, and I'll tell you this from firsthand experience, having my operations curtailed all over the world constantly, is that it's 5 million degrees outside and the grid's overloaded in many places. And as part of the service that we provide to the grid as Bitcoin miners, we curtail when there's emergency demand. So, all week that week, my miners are being shut down in North Carolina and Iowa and everywhere. Pretty much.
Choice, or you're doing that, or they're doing?
Yes and no, depends. So, like, if I have machines that are if I'm at a host facility and I've signed a contract with them, I don't have a choice. Where because they're getting that as part of their electric rate, so I just we have to comply to a lot of facilities. At some of my facilities where I own the infrastructure, I do have a choice, but I'm also in the program, so it actually makes sense for me to curtail anyway. And we talked about this. When did we talk about this? On a podcast. I think it was with Knut Svanholm when he was here. We just did a series with Knut. It's too bad we couldn't get him talking to MeetUp, but Knut was asking about this, so we're kind of talking about it and talking through it. And not all rewards are just monetary. They make sense, right? So I work very closely with Duke Energy in North Carolina and the Carolinas, and they're calling me. They're like, "Yo, Maddie, you're one of the few people who actually shuts their shit down when we have an emergency. Like, what's going on? Why? How can you do that?" Because so many other facilities that are in this program kind of, will not do it because they've got, say they have a factory that's, people are building furniture or something, right? They're using tons of energy. Well, they can't, they get an emergency curtailment in the middle of the work week. it's very hard to send and very expensive to send 100 workers home for the day. They'd rather just, say, fuck it, we're not going to curtail this time and we'll pay the increased, bill for that 8-hour period. Well, for me, I can just press a button and shut down megawatts of energy and just, provide that back to the grid and they can redirect it where they need it. So, but even if it wasn't economically, even if it was close where I would lose a little bit of money, I would still do it just to give the positive incentive to them so they understand, wow, this is actually pretty powerful. This customer who uses all this energy, who shuts down every time I really need them, that's actually pretty useful for me. So there's the thought there.
Good thing.
So you guys are giving out a free Bitcoin, right? Is that what that
Yes, just follow this link. If you send it here, I'll double it. Yeah, just watch the YouTube video.
All right, so there's some giveaways left over from Bitcoin Day Tampa. I'm going to put them here. There's these Hyperion Decimus t-shirts from Chris Sullivan. I'll make you fight over them. First come, first serve. And there's this, our good friend John Burnett, who's been here before.
And are these are your business card guys?
Yes.
Madison's business cards are up here. This is a digital privacy session. So this guy has a new website with online, and he's doing a membership thing. So take one of these if you're interested in your digital privacy. And let's give Madison one more round of applause. Thank you, Madison. By the way, Madison and a couple of other college and high school students are going to be on a panel at Bitcoin Day Naples on January 17th. I know that's kind of far away, but we're already planning ahead for a youth panel at Bitcoin Day Naples, so that's cool. And yeah, thank you everybody for coming, and we'll see you next time.
It's like feeling electric.
I
wish I had.
Bringing the kids tonight. I literally just snuck in right now. I just picked up tape from soccer to my friend's house. Nice to meet you.